Hi, so now we'll be talking about the last section of this topic where we have been discussing about different methods of studying genetic diseases. We have discussed cytogenetics so far, and this is going to be the last section where we'll be talking cumulatively about the molecular and the biochemical methods. So, from the name itself, it assumes to be quite confusing. Like when we say biochemical, when we say molecular, cytogenetics, all these methods, are associated with your biological samples, but the approach, the technique are quite segregating these three methods separately. So, when we were talking about cytogenetics, we were completely talking about the cell behavior, so to say, and when we'll be talking about the molecular methods, as we'll be going ahead with the topic, you will realize that this method exclusively talks about DNA at the molecular level, wherein we are trying to identify if there are any genetic mutations in any region of your genes or your DNA. And with respect to biochemical methods, we'll be talking in context of other nucleic acids, like we'll be talking about ribonucleic acids, RNA, we'll be talking about proteins, and that is how, at the level of very micro level, these two technical aspects needs to be very clearly distinguished. So starting with the biochemical methods, see, biochemical methods basically are carried out at the cellular or at the subcellular level. So generally when we're talking about the cell extracts, again, if you're talking about the cells, it could be either cytogenetics, either could be biochemical. So how to identify what kind of approach is based on the discipline of cytogenetics and biochemistry as two different subdisciplines of biology, of different other main disciplines. How do you differentiate all these two disciplines when you're talking about the cell, right? So biochemical methods, when we talk specifically, it is applied to main chemical compounds of genetics, which is including DNA, then RNA and proteins. So at this level when we talk, then we're talking about the biochemical methods. But when we're talking about the level of chromosomes, that becomes the exclusive discipline of cytogenetics. Okay, so now I think it will be getting more clearer. Biochemical techniques are used to determine the activities of your genes within your cells, and then try to analyze the substrates of those activities and the products of any gene controlled reactions, right? So in one approach, these cells are ground up and the subsequent chemicals are fractioned for your further analysis. For instance, when we talk about the specific techniques in biochemistry or biochemical methods for studying genetic diseases, like there is chromatography, there is electrophoresis, which are used to separate the components of proteins so that you have the inherited differences in your structures, which could be revealed through these techniques, right? For example, there is a compound called thymine, which is found in DNA. If a radioactive thymine is placed in a tissue culture medium in which the cells are growing, then you will see that the genes use that radioactive thymine to duplicate themselves, okay, so that rapid expansion takes place. So within one chemical itself, when you are seeing a change in its constitution or in its characteristics, there is a different overall change that you see in the growth or the development of that particular cell. So therefore, that understanding that characteristic trait of one particular compound within one sample of DNA of your blood sample or your cell culture, howsoever, so therefore that composition gives a broader understanding of how impact it is laying upon on your health or your overall profile. So when cells containing these radioactive thymines were analyzed, it showed that during duplication, the DNA molecule split itself into half, and the half synthesizes its missing components. So itself, it was manufacturing that part of that DNA which was split into like in another half. So it was expanding its own chain of DNA. So this is one example that you can understand how important it is to look for that composition of that DNA to understand the overall profile of it, overall impact of it. Therefore, there are few chemical tests which are used to distinguish certain inherited conditions of humans. Like there are different form of blood analysis which reveal different form of inherited abnormalities. For example, phenylketonuria, then galactosemia, and there are other gout and your urea related abnormalities. Genomics has provided a battery of different diagnostic tests that can be carried out on individuals' DNA. In fact, some of these are even applied to fetuses during in vitro during that particular stage. So therefore, we can apply biochemical methods at different phases of life, at different levels of identifying the complications associated with that particular symptom that we are able to study further. So this was about the biochemical methods. We'll be studying two specific methods under it. For your exam point of view, you need to know the basics of all of it, but you need not to do the research on all of these methods. For instance, chromatography is important, electrophoresis is important, spectrometry you can avoid for now because in your next semester also will be continuing with this topic. So for now you can just introduce yourself to what are different methods that you can study for, and how do you, in your own perception, how do you differentiate these biochemical methods with respect to molecular methods. For example, when we're talking about DNA, you would have heard of PCR technique, I'm pretty sure. Now in PCR also, when you do PCR, that PCR technique is followed by electrophoresis, or before that your fragment of DNA undergoes electrophoresis. No, so for doing the electrophoresis you must know PCR. Now electrophoresis is a biochemical method, PCR is a molecular method. So both these methods cannot be studied segregatedly. What happens after you do PCR? You must know that what you're going to do in electrophoresis. The end product of PCR is what you are going to take up for your electrophoresis sample, and simultaneously you do it. So both these methods are therefore equally important to be understood in their applications, in their outcomes, and in their techniques. Okay. So here in particular biochemical methods we'll be talking about chromatography and we'll be talking about electrophoresis. Starting with chromatographic methods, see, these are categorized into three. Firstly is the ion exchange chromatography, second being size exclusion chromatography, and third is the affinity chromatography. The ion exchange chromatography separates your proteins based on the charge that it has. These chromatographic columns are prepared for both the negative ion exchanges and for the positive ion exchanges, negative being the anions and positive being the cations. So elution of the target protein is done by changing the pH in that column, which results in a change or the neutralization of the charged functional groups of each protein that we are going to segregate with respect to the charges. So for here, your basic information that you need to know about ion exchange chromatography is that we can separate proteins from the given constituent sample that we have based on what kind of charge do they possess. Okay, so that is one form of chromatographic method. Second being with respect to your size. Now when you are doing the electrophoresis also, there is the visibility of movement of sample in the gel with respect to the size of that of the component, like be it protein or be it your DNA sample or RNA sample. So it separates. What happens is when you're doing that filtration or doing the gel filtration, it separates the larger proteins from the smaller ones, because larger molecules, they travel faster, and through a cross-linked polymer which is already there in the chromatographic column. So that is how that movement is understood. The larger proteins do not fit into the pores of the polymer, whereas the smaller proteins, it can fit easily, and therefore they take longer to travel through the chromatographic column, and therefore they take a less direct route. So therefore we see that the heavier constituents, they travel more with respect to the components who are comparatively lighter. So that is one form of chromatographic method. The third being the affinity chromatography. It is a very useful technique for completing your protein purification process. So there are beads in your chromatographic column which are cross-linked to the ligands that bind specifically to a target protein. So this protein is then removed from the column by rinsing with the solution which contains free ligands, and this method generally gives you a purest result and a high specific activity compared to the other techniques. So this is one way of understanding the chromatography also. Then the second method I'll be discussing is the blotting technique. Now this blotting technique is also associated with electrophoresis, so I kept it for your broader understanding that what are different forms of it, and in biochemical method how are they being used for the study of electrophoresis method also. So therefore when we study blotting, see, blots, basically this term blot is understood as a technique where we transfer your RNA sample, or within your sample we segregate RNA, DNA or proteins onto a carrier so that they can be separated for the further technique of electrophoresis to be conducted. So blotting therefore is a technique of transferring RNA, DNA or proteins onto a carrier so that they can be separated. Now there are three types of blotting techniques: northern blotting, western blotting and southern blotting. It does not have any association with the direction as the name specifies, but because the first technique was the southern blotting, which was named after the person whose surname was Southern, so therefore in that response this name nomenclature has been given. So southern, then after that there was northern blotting identified, that technique was identified, and therefore that person was not northern but in response to southern blotting, because southern blotting specifically detects DNA, so northern blotting was doing RNA. So in contrast to what you have already detected DNA, so they gave this nomenclature of northern and the western blotting, but southern was actually with respect to the person who introduced this technique. So studying the northern blotting, okay, sorry, there's a typo, just for your clarification, southern blotting comes under using this southern blotting we detect the DNA, so therefore that is considered under the molecular method. So in biochemical method we'll be studying the northern blotting and the western blotting. The northern blotting basically helps you detect specific RNA sequences. It was developed by James Elwin and George Stark. They were the scholars from Stanford University. Now under this procedure, how do we do it is basically your RNA sample is isolated from a biological sample. Then on the other side we are also preparing the gel for the purpose of electrophoresis. Now that sample, segregated sample, isolated sample, is loaded on the prepared gel. According to the size of the RNA sample, it gets separated on the gel, okay, when you run the gel. So that's a very different process. You have electrodes, you have a solution, and then you turn on the electric current. On that basis, over the period of time, like say 30 minutes, that your correct sample is in a moving state. So that way you see that the gel is showing some separation of the sample, of the constituents of the sample with respect to their size. Then after this electrophoresis happened, so electrophoresis form a constitution of this blotting technique. So it is one of the part of blotting technique. So Now you have a separated composition of that gel, of that sample that you had while running the gel. Now then gel is blotted on a nylon membrane in form of a sandwich arrangement, which is then placed in a dish which contains the buffer. Now in this buffer you have probe of different fragments which are complementary, and it could bind to the given sample, and therefore it could lead to undergo hybridization. Right. Now after this hybridization, we keep it for, after this buffer or all these is prepared, they are kept at one side, so that that hybridization could easily take place without any form of disturbance. So it is kept aside for like say 30-40 minutes, depending on the gel we are taking, depending on also the membrane that we are taking. So now after some time, that membrane is washed, so that excess of probe fragments which are remaining and have not found any complementary sequence, they could be removed, right? Because we do not want extra probes to be identified under the microscopic observations. So after these probes are removed, you label these probes which are detected, which are having, which have shown a binding sequence to some complementary sequences. Now under chemiluminescence reactions, or you say autoradiography, you have the identifiable sequences under the microscopic observations, or even there are different machines and softwares that can easily identify these probes. So that is how you do the identification of proteins of RNA sequences through Northern blotting. Similarly, when we are talking about Western blotting, it is also called as immunoblotting technique. It relies on the specificity of binding between the protein of interest and the probe. So let's say, considering the another probe being antibodies, and we are trying to identify the antibody antigen reaction, and we are trying to say whether the person has that antigen, or we are trying to study that interaction also. So to allow the detection of that particular protein also, we take this example. Now in this case we have a different we have the electrophoresis again, but here we'll be using the Page technique, as in there is a different gel which is polyacrylamide gel which is used. Like in this we had the nylon membrane, right? In here we'll be using the gel which is polyacrylamide gel for the purpose of electrophoresis as a precursor for Western blotting. So now we do the electrophoresis. Similarly, that sample is taken, isolated, run on the gel. We pass the electricity through that gel so that it separates on the surface of that nitrocellulose membrane. The probe is added to this nitrocellulose membrane, and then it is waited for the binding to take place, similar to this procedure. But in both the situations, the answers as in the depiction of binding is totally different. So I would request all of you to just go on Google and see the results of these Western and Northern blotting techniques. So this is about blotting techniques. Now coming on to electrophoresis. See, it is another method we say in involving the separation of compounds which are capable of acquiring certain electric charges in the conducting electrodes. So based on what charge it possesses, it could be segregated into also it shows a different movement over the gel. So it is defined as a migration of the charged particles through a solution under the influence of external electrical field. Now there are two forms of electrophoresis we see. There's a zone electrophoresis and the moving boundary electrophoresis. Zone electrophoresis means migration of charged particles on membranes, like you have paper, cellulose, gel, and all these things we have discussed. Apart from that, and this is basically commonly used in the laboratory purposes, moving boundary is something which allows the charged species to migrate in a free moving solution, which is the buffer solution with a supporting medium. So instead of going to a particular electrode or showing its movements towards a particular electrode on that medium itself, it transfers itself to the solution, to the buffer solution. So this is the difference between the two. Now in zone electrophoresis, you have paper, gel, thin layer, then cellulose acetate form of mediums wherein we can transfer the charges from the compound to the medium. In the moving boundary, you have capillary electrophoresis, isotachophoresis, that's the technique, then isoelectric focusing, immunoelectrophoresis, and things like that. Now, why we are studying electrophoresis? Basically, it is applied in the field of in different fields for that matter, but specifically in the field of DNA sequencing, which is another molecular method. Then in other medical researches, in diagnosis of various other diseases also. So therefore it's a very important method. Like PCR electrophoresis form the baseline of any understanding of any biological molecular method or studying any genetic disease for that matter. So it is very important from the research, like from your academic point of view, to understand what these techniques are. And even if you are planning for some biological researches or lab-based researches, then these form the basic techniques that you generally stick to for the analysis of your samples. This will be it about electrophoresis. Now I'll be shifting to the molecular methods. So although you have seen there is an overlapping between the molecular methods and the biochemical methods, but these molecular genetic techniques basically are something when we are directly or even indirectly we're referring to only the DNA samples. So anything you are studying, even the structure, even the function of a gene, but at the level of that DNA, is how we understand the molecular methods in human genetics. It studies the structure and function of genes at molecular level and how they are inherited from one generation to the next generation. So the molecular information is used to determine the patterns of descent, or patterns of, as in the form of mode of inheritance, and understanding the genetic errors or mutations which are causing that form of genetic diseases, right? When we talked about chromosomes, then we know that very long DNA it comprises of long DNA molecules, which again possesses genetic information. Then there is a whole set of chromosomal DNA which constitutes the genome, right? And we know how even on the smallest of the bacteria, you have n number of almost like 6 lakh something DNA base pairs. So compare about humans or other animal genomes which are having 3 billions of base pairs. So within these base pairs, again within these genetic regions, genomic regions, you have coding regions, non-coding regions. Coding regions, maybe you have regulatory genes, you have modifying genes, different classes of genes. So expression of all these genes and initiation or blockage of any expression of these genes is therefore how we understand the expression of DNA ultimately at the molecular level. So therefore, if you have to summarize, we are talking the extent of the scope of DNA or the molecular methods at the level of studying the DNA structural variabilities or single nucleotide polymorphisms, then single gene disorders, multigenic disorders, multifactorial disorders, mitochondrial disorders, epigenetic disorders, so to say. So there's a very, very, very wide scope of molecular methods if you're talking with respect to the genetic diseases, genetic disorders. And to perform any form of genetic testing or prenatal testing, postnatal testing, you need that DNA sample, be it from your blood, any soft tissue sample, your saliva, hair, anything. So variations in that DNA has to be identified using different techniques. Is how we consider different techniques of molecular methods. So for instance, Southern blotting, as I've already introduced. Then there is PCR method, DNA sequencing, and other gene expression studies. So all of these are basically categorized under molecular methods, but they are studied or performed in conjugation with biochemical methods. So when we talked about electrophoresis, it goes hand in hand with the blotting techniques. Blotting occurs when you have a PCR based sample, or and that sample, ultimately what you're going to do is sequencing the DNA. Right, at the end of the day, when you want to study the DNA after blotting, after electrophoresis, you have a sequence of DNA. So that expression, that sequencing, is therefore some applications of molecular methods of DNA, of genetic studies. Now, a simple categorization is given. These are not the methods that we'll be discussing, but simply categorizing this field of molecular methods, it has revolutionized with the inventions of the technique of recombinant DNA technology, wherein DNA of any gene of interest or from any donor organism, be it human or any animal, they are cut out of chromosomes and they are inserted into a vector to make that recombinant DNA, right? Which is then again amplified, manipulated, studied, and modified the genome of the organisms by transgenesis. So this technique itself, the fundamental technique of our DNA technology, which is amplification, is very important when we are studying not just the human genome, but even like considering the current situation of where we are surrounded with lot of harmful bacteria, harmful viruses around it. This technology becomes very crucial, very important, both in the positive as well as the negative way. So when we are inserting the recombinant DNA molecule into a bacterial cell, it replicates, it produces many copies, that is, it undergoes amplification, and therefore what we ultimately get is a consequence of DNA cloning, if you could understand it. The whole new formulation of DNA of your genetic composition is how you understand as DNA cloning. So all these collections of large number of different clones or recombinant DNA molecules, all these comprise of what we call as genomic library, because here it acts as a starting point of understanding the entire genome, specifically the human genome. And this has been a very important and a landmark transformation in the genetics or the field of genetics, in terms of its application, to what extent we are using the genomic information, to what extent we are modifying the genomic information so that we get the minutest of all details present within the human genome, or for that matter animal genome. And therefore ultimately the area of interest after studying these genomic sequencing or cloned DNA, or from these genomic libraries, the substances that we get, is ultimately providing us a baseline information of different forms of expressions of any particular gene, and therefore different various expressions of your human diseases and disorders which have a genetic predisposition. So therefore that storyline of different inventions and advancements of technology and impact on understanding and creating a base of information for all these genetic makeup of human DNA, human genes, is ultimately for the, like I said, it has the positive as well as the negative side. So positive side being the interest of studying human diseases and disorders at a macro as well as the micro picture. Now coming on to the molecular techniques, of all these, there will be a few of the techniques that you will be going to study in detail in your next semester, like RFLP, PCR, even blotting, sequencing, microarrays is also there. But I'll introduce you to few of them. Like we'll be doing DNA sequencing, southern blotting will be doing. PCR, I think most of you are already aware of it. RFLP you can read of your own interest if at all you want to, but be at least acquainted with what this technique is. Okay, so Coming to the southern blotting directly. Now, this technique was named after the inventor named Edwin Southern. He was a British biologist and he detected a specific DNA sequence in the DNA samples. So, because his surname was Southern, so the name of the technique was named after him, unlike the other techniques. This technique basically combines the there's a typo error. The transfer in the separated DNA fragments after the process of electrophoresis to a filter membrane and then probing the hybridization to detect those fragments. So that is how you study this technique, wherein you have a fragment, you run it under the gel electrophoresis, then like we have already discussed in other and western one. So after electrophoresis, after running it on the gel, you transfer it on a filter membrane, and there you provide the probes for the further hybridization to take place, so that those fragments of DNA could ultimately be identified, right? So it helps identify whether a particular fragment of gene is present or not in the genomic DNA, or whether there is any change in the size of the DNA fragment or not, right? Then it's a very demanding technique technically, but also it is time consuming. So therefore we are also adhering to newer techniques for larger identifications of deletions or duplications, such as there's this technique of multiplex ligation probe amplification, MLPA, and then we have more updated PCR, which is real-time PCR, unlike the conventional PCR method. So what you do in this technique is the separation, the transfer, and the hybridization. So that's it. Therefore, if hybridization takes place, you see the blotting pattern, and then you see whether there's some deletion in terms of the binding sequencing, if there's any duplication or any form of aberration visible, right? Now it combines the Egros gel electrophoresis for size separation of DNA with the methods to transfer the size separated DNA to a filter membrane for the probe hybridization. Thus, the key technique here becomes the hybridization. Therefore, we form a double stranded DNA molecule between the single stranded DNA probe and the single stranded DNA of the target molecule, of the target DNA of the patient sample that we have collected so far. Right, so that is how you do the southern blotting. Plus, when we talk about the applications of this technique, it is applied into large field of gene mapping. You study in terms of evolutionary traces, developmental studies, diagnostics, even in forensics if you go, like for example DNA fingerprinting, or even the RFLPs that we are talking. So these blotting techniques are part of, like PCR, electrophoresis, blotting, all these are part of any form of studying of genetic sample. Coming to the next technique is DNA sequencing. This will be the last slide. Now here DNA sequencing is understood as a process to determine the nucleotide sequence of any given DNA fragment. Just to determine the sequence, we can locate the regulatory gene sequences, or we can compare between the homologous genes, or we can even identify the mutations. So that is the purpose of doing the DNA sequencing. Now there were multiple methods identified, but Frederick Sanger's method is something that he designed, a procedure which is analogous to DNA replication, using the chain termination method and initiating the extension of the DNA at a particular site on template DNA using your primer, which is complementary to the template region. So his method is something that we consider as a more classical also, plus the more standard method that we use for DNA sequencing. Now, so as the name itself says, similar to the PCR method, you do the denaturation, you introduce a primer which is complementary to the sequence that you're trying to understand, that sequence, right? You introduce a primer, and then you see the extension of that primer. There is a binding of the two templates, right? So you have the enzyme called DNA polymerase. Then at the end you have DDNTPs, which is di-deoxynucleotides, which are preventing the further addition of the nucleotides, right? Because it has some hydrogen group present unlike the hydroxyl group, so therefore that terminates the further addition of nucleotides. Now after, when this sequence is done, this hybridization or probing introduction, primary introduction is done, those fragments of DNA are separated on the page electrophoresis based on their size, right? After you get that separation on the gel, they are exposed to UV lights or some radiations so that they are clearly visible under the observations. So that is how you identify these sequences, or you get a pattern of sequences, and that is clearly visible. But there are few limitations associated with this, which is in terms of high cost, plus also it is extensive consuming your time. When you're talking about PCR, then you're doing the electrophoresis, you have to wait for a really really long time. And if it is just one sample, let's say if your gel breaks in between, if there was some error in gel process in making of your gel, then ultimately all the things are affected. So it's really very precise, but also every composition has to be very precisely done, very technically. It has to be put, the gel has to be loaded, very very precise technique has to be followed at all steps. So all these things needs to be very carefully monitored, and if at all it gets disturbed, if at all it gets hampered, then whole of the things has to be started afresh. So therefore it's very very time consuming, right? So this is about it. Here we finish with all the techniques we have done, about the molecular methods we have done, cytogenetics method, pedigree method, biochemical method. I would recommend you all also explore the videos of these techniques, because that will make the topic more clearer, right? Yeah, so let me know if you have any questions about it. Thank you.